Thank you all for being here with us today. We'll get started, and we'll have started off with a softball question that we have here. Okay, what are the commissioners going to do to bring resolution to the apparent impasse on the wastewater treatment discussions? That's softball.
Well, you know, this is quite a lengthy story. If you really think about it, we had a plan in Clackamas County to add new digesters. That plan has been ongoing for a long period of time, and it had a date specific on when that would happen. I would say that previous commissions have put that off, but we had a plan for that to occur approximately 4 years from now. But we accelerated that plan because we realized finally that we don't have much reserve. We don't have much capacity out there. Now, when we started that conversation, not only in Clackamas County Service District number 1, but also with Tri-Cities, Oregon City brought up the fact that, wait, we want to talk about governance. That's a completely different question. So, you know, they have accused us of mismanagement. And I might note that Oregon City has 4 moratoriums of their own. But the bottom line is those are 2 separate subjects. We have decided that we would send the question of governance to Oregon Consensus for a process for them to bring the parties together, although we tried to bring the parties together upon the suggestion of West Linn, and Oregon City refused, as well as Gladstone. So then the other question is when are we going to provide the capacity? And I think that's inherently our responsibility, is to make sure that we have the capacity necessary to allow businesses to grow, to allow new businesses to come into this county, and certainly take care of our residents. It's not just about new, it's also about fixing what's there. We have a 30-year-old plant there in Oregon City, and it needs upgrade for sure. So again, there are separate issues, one of which we're sending to Oregon Consensus, and the other one we're tackling ourselves, and that is trying to educate people, and you'll hear that often, educate people about why this is needed. Thank you.
I'd just like to make a comment about this, because I don't know if many people here remember Clearwater. I don't know if you raise your hand. That was back over a decade. Yeah, Ernie remembers. That was the first initiative that the county moved forward with to start to regionalize wastewater systems, because all the analysis showed that if you regionalize, if you have a larger, newer capacity, that with multiple users you can actually maintain lower rates and get more bang for your buck with the investments. And so essentially what happened is the Tri-City plant became upgraded, modernized, and you obviously can take a look at today and see it is quite a interesting plant with new membrane technology, so on and so forth. That's Tri-Cities. And then the other Clackamas County Service District number 1, which is our other provider, also invested dollars in upgrading that particular facility. But as Chair Ludlow pointed out, we are now at the point where we need additional infrastructure in order to make sure that we don't run into moratorium problems and issues. So sewer systems never go away, they just recycle things. I don't know, that's from my perspective. And I do agree with the chair, and I suspect my colleagues will say the same thing. There's 2 pathways here. There's the technical piece that really is a critical path, as I think we've called it before, that needs to get done one way or another. And then there's the governance piece. And I think it is wise of us to separate both of those out at this point to make sure that the technical management, because Water and Environment Services does a phenomenal job. They are our technicians, they are our engineers, they are the people that you can go to sleep at night knowing your toilet's going to flush the next morning and forever. They need to move ahead with the technical fixes, and then we need to do the political work to figure out what is a fair, just, and equitable governance process. And that's going to involve multiple cities, not just the Tri-Cities, but obviously Happy Valley, Milwaukee, and portions of our unincorporated areas as well.
So let me just cut in on that a little bit. I was a member of that former commission. We had just dedicated a sewage treatment plant, and we're told that we had plenty of capacity. And frankly, the only person who knew enough to tell us that we were getting the wrong answers sitting at the end of the table there. And until we discovered that Paul was right, we thought we had the capacity. So putting it off and putting it off, we didn't put it off. We were told something else.
Yeah.
Paul let us know that what we were told was wrong.
Well, it's been a long 15 years for me, because I've been involved in this for about 15 years, wearing several different hats. So I was originally in Oak Lodge Water when I was watching this unfold, and then I saw it, the concern that I had, which led me to run for Oak Lodge Sanitary District, which I did that in 2003. So I've been at the table, several tables, for a long time, continuously on this particular subject. And it's unfortunate, but I just in retrospect, you know, elected officials come and go. I'm one of those. We are all, you know, us here, we're all elected officials. We come and go, and we had a 25-year dispute with the city of Milwaukee that, fortunately, former Mayor Ferguson and I were able to negotiate and settle that 25-year dispute. And then we had that opportunity actually to implement what a regional committee worked on for years and finished in 2008. And in 2008, we actually hit that sweet spot where everyone agreed that we basically needed to build the capacity, you know, where we were going to do it, even though it wasn't ideal, but, you know, we all agreed. I think that was the biggest thing. We agreed on what we were going to do, and that was in 2008. And since then, elected officials come and go, and now it's a different set of folks around, and I'm including the cities in this discussion as well when I talk about elected officials. And so there's understanding and misunderstanding, and there's also other motivations that drive it. But at the end of the day, we are elected to represent the ratepayers. It's all about producing the lowest rate possible and providing the capacity. That's what this is about. It's really simple. But unfortunately, politics interferes with a lot of decisions, and I don't want to be long-winded about the answer, but I will say that I've been watching the same mistakes repeat over and over, and it's very difficult for me to make recommendations and not have them followed, or cite things and bring attention to things and not have them being recognized. So I have a different course of action I think we ought to take, and we'll hopefully, December 10th will be our last regional meeting for this year, and that regional committee will hopefully come up with a conclusion about what to do, proceed with our capacity issue, number one, because we're gonna hit a moratorium. We're over capacity right now. We're actually in a danger zone. We're actually running a very high risk operation and running these tanks to the top. And the other decision that hopefully they'll make is an interim advisory committee to work on the future governance, because there seems to be an issue over control. Silly as that may seem, I don't see a lot of fame and fortune into controlling a wastewater district, but it's terribly imperative and important for our economic development. There's no pride in this, so it's insane. I mean, if we're all going to leave a legacy, my idea of a legacy was not going to be 2 digesters, but
There you go.
here we are.
Okay. Next question, one that's near and dear to my heart. What is the state of available employment land in the county?
Oh, Martha, you said that today.
Do you want me to say it first? Do you want to
Just
say it first?
again.
Okay.
No, I don't have to. Go ahead.
Okay. We had quite the discussion this morning, and as you know, our meetings can be very entertaining upon occasion, so I suggest that you listen to us late at night when you can't sleep. But here was the conversation today. We have identified that, yes, there is a long-term constriction in our employment land needs in this county when you're looking at a 20 to 30 to 50-year window. I think that's true. I had a conversation with Representative Barton about it. I think the legislature gets that. So that's what you might perceive as the bad news. But the good news is, in the immediate, when you take a look at our website for economic development, and I'm looking at Catherine Comer in the back of the room here, we do have one of the best economic development teams, I believe, in the state of Oregon, and we have a system whereby you can look at shovel-ready sites, see what's available, ask for certain sizes, take a look as a business kind of going in there to try and make sites. So the way I see this is there's the immediate, first things first. You do what's necessary. What's necessary now to meet Performance Clackamas is to work on getting jobs here in this county with what we already have available and in the pipeline, okay? The second piece is after you do what's necessary, then you do what's possible, which is actually directing our staff to take a look at the long-term land use needs to see, do we need to tweak rural and urban reserves, and how do we work through that with an analysis and data from our staff and work with our partners from Metro, because we're all in this together, we're going to have to work on that. And then the third thing I say is, okay, then you do the impossible. And the impossible is, what's that 50-year supply? Where's it going to land? And what kinds of businesses are we going to attract to land there? So we're doing all three of those things, and I do think this county will be successful. So don't take this notion that we have a long-term look, that we don't have employment land available now. We do. But longer term, that's our job as a commission, is to make sure we have it now, in the near future, and in the far future. And I believe that's where we're headed as a commission. At least that's my opinion. So colleagues, if you disagree, let me know. Okay.
Or if we agree.
Well, I disagree. First, the question is, it depends. First thing, if none of us have any idea what industry is going to be like in the future, none of us. Do we need flat 100-acre lots, or can we build 5-story high-tech facilities? We don't know that. None of us can even imagine that. I think we see a lot of that. The other thing is, does it mean we need to keep creeping out into our valuable farmland? Or do we need to, and where people will have to drive, we'll have to provide sewer and water and roads? Or do we look at what we have and make sure we're utilizing that properly? So it depends. Our discussion today, we have 1,600 acres of industrial land. Is that good enough for the next 50 years or 20 years? I don't know. I don't think any of you can answer that. We just have to be prepared to look where next to invest. McLaughlin Boulevard's a great example of an opportunity not so dissimilar to Cruz Way. If you think about the opportunities that exist right outside that door, and we just disregard it and build out further and further, so people have to drive further and further, and no one wants to spend the money to pay for the roads or the light rail or the sewer or the water. So we have a problem, and that's the discussion we need to have.
We at Clackamas County paid for a study that indicated right now we are 1,100 acres short of available industrial land, whereas Commissioner Schrader cited some spaces in the county that are in Estacada or Molalla where freight is not easily accessible. The I-5 corridor is one of the most easily accessible. That's where a lot of our businesses want to be. A lot of our businesses go to Washington County because they have flat land. They also have gain share. They also have millions and millions of dollars that they can front the businesses in the form of tax credits or whatever type of incentives to do that. In Clackamas County, we pretty much have our hands tied. Right now we're negotiating with Metro, who is looking at the jobs land supply issue. And as I remind my colleagues today, Metro, through the court system, does not have to implement Goal 9. And Goal 9 is about the jobs, but it is the county's responsibility to implement Goal 9, and that is the economic development of our land use. And so we are more than willing to do that, and that's why you may hear we're at loggerheads with our regional planning department in Metro, because we want to implement Goal 9. We want Clackamas County to be prosperous. We are still behind in our pre-recession job loss recovery. We have not recovered the necessary jobs that we lost, nor have the wages of our jobs gone up. And I'm sure as you as business owners can feel that. You can feel the economy getting going, sputtering, taking off, retreating. A lot of it has to do with the type of businesses that we're able to attract, and so that's what we're working on as we go forward.
My 2 cents on this, it took about 3 years, but we finally got our goals identified at the county, so we have a strategic plan underway, and in that goal setting process, employment land and meeting our needs was one of those goals. as was a number of other things. And in 2011, Group McKenzie did a study on industrial land in the Portland metro region, and it was no surprise, the outcome. There's a shortage of industrial land. That's a 20-year-old problem. Our digesters, our wastewater, 20-year-old problem. Our roads, road repair, maintenance, funding for roads, 20-plus-year-old problem in Clackamas County. These are the building blocks for our economy. And while the urban rural reserves process is what we're struggling under right now, you know, there's housing land, there's commercial land, there's industrial land, and the industrial land is really the key. And though I do agree with Commissioner Bernard that maybe we do need to do something with McLaughlin. We have a lot of opportunity, but there's no 50, 100-acre sites on McLaughlin for industrial land. It's not the right place. So, but we can do more with what we have, and that's part of our goal. And our Economic Development Commission, some members are actually, a couple of folks here in the room sit on that. We just did a long, great study here about a year and a half ago on our employment land needs, both inside the UGB, what we currently have, and outside the UGB. They did great work. They helped identify that. The Johnson study we just completed, that identified that shortage as well, that Tootie just mentioned. We have, in this reserves process, the responsibility, not the UGB, not near term, but a 20 to 50-year responsibility. That's what the law says, that's what our job is to do. And in our goals to establishing what that is consistent with that. So everything points to identifying where that's at. However, we have a shortfall. And the map and the process was really, unfortunately, in my estimation, was really, I call it the map of acquiescence. All the NIMBYism that took place said, not in my backyard, not in my backyard. So it went all the way out to shoot almost to Sandy, right? In the boring areas where most of our industrial employment land was identified. Really, that was it. And we know our hope was Damascus would be successful, that the infrastructure would go out, the highway, the sewer, the water, everything would go out that way. And then that future land just outside of Damascus would be our reserves. Well, we know where that's at. Damascus is about to dissolve. If they, perhaps it'll be on the ballot. So with that change, that's a huge change, is that's not really viable. There's no infrastructure. There's billions of dollars to get it out there. So these are real problems. And if we really are concerned about economic development, which is really about jobs, I think we lose sight of that. It's about jobs. We are growing an economy, our population, we're growing our population faster than we're growing jobs. And that's a recipe for poverty. That's not a recipe for prosperity. And I take this job seriously. I know we all do. I don't mean to say we don't, but I'm very analytical, and I'm just looking at the building blocks that we need to focus on, and that's part of our goals. Our goals are sewer, our goals are roads, our goals are employment land, and we need to fulfill that.
Great. Thank you.
I thought I'd say a word or two.
Go ahead.
Just two. If you really look at what's happened in the past few years, the urban-rural maps were approved by Metro, and then two cities, 20 entities, but two cities, Westland and Tualatin, sued over that. It went to the Court of Appeals, and Court of Appeals gave it back to LCDC, and LCDC gave a mandate to review the Stafford area. Now that's the problem in Clackamas County specifically. Now that remand was not narrow, it wasn't broad, it was just a remand. We've taken that opportunity to say we have some other concerns, remembering that this map is nearly 6 years old now, and a lot of things happened in 6 years. As a real estate broker, I'll tell you what's been happening lately. You can read about it all the time. There's a bidding war on property out there. When you go to buy a house, good luck. How about the rental prices? Those are just going up exponentially. And the law of supply and demand says when you don't have enough of something, that existing stock is going to go up in price. So Metro's decided that after 6 years, you don't need any more urban growth boundary, and you wait another 3 years. We, as part of the remand, the commission sent a letter with the letterheads of 3 cities, Lake Oswego, Tualatin, and Westland, and our letterhead, and said, please, Metro, do not start holding hearings until we have a facilitated discussion with our cities. Metro said, no thanks, and they went ahead with it. We were not at the table, and we are not there. We will have our facilitated discussion, decide about Metro, but separate of that are the properties we talk about. Damascus, disintegrating, boring, that's ridiculous. That's so far away from realizing any infrastructure. It's unbelievable. And there's 180 acres of prime farmland there, foundation farmland, that is part of the urban plan. Without infrastructure from Damascus, boring is doomed. And so we wanted to look at that. We wanted to look at 3 other areas for undesignated. And people are, especially south of Wilsonville, are all concerned about undesignated. You have any idea how long it takes for undesignated to become shovel ready? Probably 3 decades. And so what's the big concern? A lot of people will be out of office. A lot of people will be dead. So what is the big worry about that? Are we planning for the future, or are we just doing the status quo? And I think they have to look at that down the line. There will be other leaders then. There will be other needs identified then, and undesignated is not so threatening. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the fact that all 3 of the Tri-Cities have interim managers going to impede the resolution of the wastewater issue?
Cool. Boy, these are softballs, right? Just checking. Right, Lori. It is interesting to see, for a variety of reasons, that there are 3 interim managers there, and to a large extent, our professional and technical people, and Don Krupp, who's our county administrator, who's very, very addressed on these issues, have had to educate these folks. And we have always looked forward to comparing notes about what is alleged versus what is fact. Again, remember that Wes Lynn said we should all come to the table, and we invited everybody to the table, but that was refused by 2 other cities. We are more than willing to participate in this discussion, but sooner or later, we have to agree on the facts. We have engineers that are glad to explain the system, glad to explain the future, and glad to explain the need here. But until we're able to sit down at the table and we all agree to disagree or agree that these are facts or not, it's going to be at loggerheads. We have a critical path that we must adhere to ensure that we have the capacity necessary for growth in this county. And I think we're hell-bent to continue on that path. We are taking advice from our 2 advisory committees, River Health and Tri-Cities, and the Regional Capacity Committee, and we're more than willing to listen to their advice. But we recognize the need, and the last thing this county needs is that M word called moratorium. Thank you.
Yeah. I'd just like to put this in context. The reason why we're in this situation right now, many decades ago, the cities in question, Oregon City, Gladstone, and West Lynn, realized the need for sewer system, and neither city could afford to build sewer plants on their own. So they came to Clackamas County and asked the county could do it. And it would be a shared service, and we would save money. Well, 30 years later, here we are, and our system is outdated, and as the population grows, more pressure is being put on it. We are in the same situation that not one city can afford to do their own sewer system. We're looking at a savings of about $100 million if we can continue with what we're offering the people now. And like Paul says, you know, this is not a sexy subject at all, but when you get up in the morning, you expect to be able to turn on the water, get clean water, and flush the toilet when you want. And this is, so just remember that, $100 million in savings, good service, and in these cities, some of these cities have infiltration problems that their pipes are so old that adds more pressure when it rains into the sewer system. So there's a lot of different problems. We're just trying to do the best with what we have here. And Laura, you asked the question, you know, about the interim managers. I would suspect you should ask the cities that question, because it's up to the cities to provide the answers and the leadership as well as it is for us. We're going to move forward with this. We're going to offer the leadership. We will be leaders in this area, and right now it's very difficult. So that's why you elected us. Thank you.
So briefly, the question was, will it impede progress, the interim city managers? I think so, because just like I mentioned, elected officials come and go. With that is institutional memory, knowledge, relationship building, and so forth. So we lost a lot of that. And over the years, we've really had some great city managers over the years, and some of which I still have, you know, relationships with. So they did really good work. But in the last few years, actually more recently than that, in the last 12 months, each of the former city managers, the recent former city managers, all said we should not be on this committee. It should not be the city managers representing us. And unlike the 75+ committees we have, we call them our ABCs, advisory boards and commissions, unlike those, if anyone's on a committee and they want to get off the committee, they just can simply resign. But you can't resign the task because it's written in the bylaws of the Tri-City Services. It says the city manager, whoever that is. So it's not as though you can shift that. So we have that situation. We have River Health that says we think we need to change the governance. We need to change the advisory board governance and the structure. So everyone has said, every city manager, every member, the cities are all saying it was time to change the structure, and we're trying to do that. And ironically, they asked for a change of governance, and we're trying to provide that, and ironically, we're sometimes criticized for doing just that, trying to find the middle ground of what is a constructive element or a constructive structure for that. And hopefully we'll find that out December 10th, and hopefully we can make some progress on that. Go ahead.
Okay. This is an easier one.
Sure.
Can you please update us on the status of reopening the Willamette Falls locks?
I would be happy to do that. Thank you, Lori. This is actually a fun topic. We convened a working group of people in the area to study and figure out how we can reopen the Willamette Falls locks. And I've been the chair of that group. We have really made quite good progress. We have a lot of partners in the region in the form of cities and counties all up and down the Willamette River as far as Lane County, signing resolutions to the federal government to reopen the locks. We have now, through legislation, sponsored a statewide task force to look at how we reopen, pay for, and transfer the locks to an ownership. One of the things that I do, as other commissioners do on other topics, is travel to Washington, D.C. to meet with our federal delegation who are wholly supportive of this, and most importantly, the owner of the locks, the United States Corps of Engineers. That's one tough nut to crack. And as wonderful as they say our plans are, well, that doesn't fall into our criteria. So some of the things that I asked Senator Wyden to work on is the definition of economy and commerce. It's a 100-year-old definition that goes up, and how they look at whether it's economically viable is the tonnage of logs that basically go through the locks. Well, you know, we don't do that anymore. We have other opportunities for economic development. And so Senator Wyden agreed to rewrite the definition for that to include things like recreation, tourism, historical values, that there are many there. And so we're looking at that. We've put a lot of pressure on through our federal delegation, and we also have a national lobby firm that's working on this with us. The local official, Louis Landry, has decided that, well, you know, this might make a good pilot project. So in order to get the Corps to cooperate, I think we're going to go with a pilot project on all the ideas that we've put together to make this run. And I think we are now third on the list. There's 2 other projects in America that are ahead of us only. We're third in the United States to look at this project. And so far, the only stumbling block is money, and that's always a problem, but it's not a large amount of money, and eventual owner to take over ownership of the locks. And I think, I'm going to stretch here, I think that needs to be the state of Oregon. And I think it would be a fantastic opportunity for partnerships for a park, along with the Blue Heron Mill site, where we're developing, and with a partnership with Metro, they're putting in a new public walkway. And for the first time in 100 years, people will get to walk out over the falls and feel the spray of the water come down. So we have a lot of ambitious plans for that, and our first stumbling block is negotiating with the Corps of Engineers, and they are very difficult, but we keep pushing. We don't take no for an answer, and I'm pushing our group forward, and I look forward in a few years that place will look quite differently.
So Clackamas Federal Credit Union, the locks are for sale.
And I'd like to make a comment about this too, and I kudos to Commissioner Smith, because she was the right person to go toe-to-toe with the Corps of Engineers. So thank you, Commissioner Smith, for that. That was great. But I would like to mention some other folks. It's been a 10-year process. Actually, Vern Duncan, about a decade ago, convened the first conversation about the locks. They pulled that conversation together, And it's taken that long, and as I said, Commissioner Smith just really came along at the right time, because the Corps of Engineers is extremely difficult to work with. But some of the folks that need to be thanked as well: Sandy Carter, people like Peggy Stigler, who've been working on this for a decade, Annette Matson from PGE. Metro's been phenomenal with Andy Cotugno, who goes to these meetings. And Tootie, what is the name of the engineer fellow that sits? It's the one name I can't remember. He's fabulous because
From Wilsonville Concrete.
Yeah, from Wilsonville Concrete.
Yeah. John, you know who that is?
Do you remember his name?
The engineer?
The
David.
engineer.
David.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Well, he can sit at our meeting and answer any engineering comment that we have, and he's been an invaluable member of that committee as well. So it's nice to see these projects. As I said, Jim says he's a senior commissioner, but I think I've been around the block a little bit too, and it's nice to see some of these come to fruition with this commission. So thank you, Commissioner Smith, because boy,
Martha.
The Corps really needed to just get
Yeah, it's fun.
just to get their game on.
Yeah,
thanks
get
to
your
you.
game on. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Here's an interesting one. What news can you share about Eagles Landing project? When it's to start and the construction time? Any
Well,
news?
yesterday we found out something that worries me, and frankly, I don't think we can really talk about it. We have hopes and dreams that Neil and his group will be successful, and we're behind him 100%. But we do have timelines, and those timelines need to be fulfilled.
Okay, thank you.
Well, there's more.
There's more to the story.
I was the only commissioner to oppose giving them money. If you think about the proposed development, 2 million square feet, an average of $300 per square foot, our investment of nearly $10 million of public funds represents about 1.4% of the development. Now, most of you who have ever built and used a bank know well that they expect that you have a 10% contingency. So 10 million is a lot of money, but in the scheme of things, at 2 million square feet, it's chump change. I constantly worry about the traffic at that quadrant of Sunnyside Road and 205. If you think about it, Clackamas Town Center is 125 acres. They have 1.4 million square feet. This development will be 40, and it'll have 2 million square feet. There isn't any way you're going to fix that traffic problem. It's going to exacerbate and become worse and worse. So I appreciate development. I don't believe in corporate giveaways or corporate welfare, and that's what I consider that decision to be. And I'll continue thinking that. So I look forward to development in certainly in Clackamas County that will work. And I got a real problem with traffic there and the density that has been proposed.
I'd like to say something on that. We didn't give them any money, and we haven't. What Neil Nedolewski asked for was credit on traffic SDCs that a prior commission gave, and he couldn't complete the project because of the recession. How many builders and people are in here understand something like that, where you couldn't get financing? So what the deal was is $7.5 million credit towards transportation SDCs, which was not all of the transportation SDCs, nor was it even close to the amount of all the SDCs that would be credited to this project. In exchange, they would build a road. And I think that's a pretty good deal. We also, there's some Orchard Garden apartments sitting there. We structured the deal that he'd need to pay cash for those up front, because those will be torn down to make the expansion for things to come. And I mentioned earlier about how other counties are able to give hundreds of millions of dollars in credits to have businesses site there. Clackamas County does not have hundreds of millions to give, but we had one thing to give, and that was a transportation SDC. And if that's what it takes to bring in 4,000 permanent family wage jobs to a medical cluster, to a business cluster, to therapy, to housing people in their golden years, then I'm willing to do that. That is situated on I-205, easy access to the freeway. That's a golden site for development. And I stand by my decision to try to work out a situation that was very difficult, a lot of different people coming in, a lot of balls to be juggled, and it was a tough deal to put forward. But I've taken my criticisms from that, from some constituents, and I'll continue to take my criticisms for that because I feel it's the right thing to do for Clackamas County to try to adhere to what I said in my campaign, is to create jobs in this county, not let situations fall by the wayside because somebody might not agree with what you're doing.
Okay.
Well, this is a forum to tell you what's going on in the county, and so on that note, I will say that this deal that we put together, I want to thank my colleagues to my left for putting together a really good deal that was very considerate, number one, of taxpayer dollars, development, all those costs. We didn't give away anything, as Tootie said, and even when, if or when, all these benchmarks are met by the developer, in my opinion, it's not a giveaway at all. There's actually a return on investment of that. So transportation SDCs, those are system development charges, and those dollars are paid for, whether it's water, sewer, you pay SDCs for parks, and the developer or the person who pays gets something for that. In this case, or in many cases, that the developer has the opportunity to build it himself, whereby they have a perfect right to either not be charged the SDC if they actually build the capacity that they incur. So this really is what that deal really is all about. And the road, there's at least one road that has to be built, and there's right-of-way needed for that road. So where these apartments sit, there happens to be property, there's an exchange. I think it's a property exchange, but when you pencil this out, if all those guidelines are met, all those benchmarks are met, county doesn't lose a penny. The county actually has a return on investment, and so do all the people who work there. I mean, there's a job quotient of this that's not being recognized. So I think we have a responsibility. I personally have a very tough time when things are characterized or mischaracterized or misinformation out over there. And this is one situation where it just seems to be fodder for just that. And it should be really about the facts and the math. And the math is there. I think our staff put together a great deal. And it's got all the requirements that he has to meet. Otherwise, it gets nothing. Exactly. So we're safe.
So I'd just like to make a comment about this. One of the reasons I was supportive is, quite frankly, we also talked quite a bit with Happy Valley and our partners in Happy Valley, who were very, very interested in seeing something of this sort move forward. And so that was a part of it, at least from my perspective, with a city that's growing, that actually does have significant employment land. Again, check our website as well on that. What motivated me was that we had identified healthcare as an economic development cluster in Clackamas County. We have a very large health system presence in this county, Providence. We have legacy systems. We have Kaiser as the mothership in that corridor in Happy Valley. And one of the opportunities that became evident with a development there was this would be another part of the healthcare cluster that we worked with our workforce folks to even have the job pipeline available with Clackamas Community College, Oregon Tech, so on and so forth. So what happened was a very structured deal. If the sidebars are not met, it doesn't happen. I look at this as running, we're always told to run government like a business. Well, we did run government like a business in this sense, in my opinion, where we tried to make a contract and a deal with significant sidebars because we have to be careful with public dollars. If those sidebars are not met, then the development will not happen. So it really motivated me to move forward in the hopes that we would enlarge our healthcare cluster here in Clackamas County.
I want to say one last thing. And I'm going to leave the whole money and giveaway question out of this. I belong to several chambers of commerce and a distinguished lifetime member in Wilsonville. The backbone of this county, business-wise, is small businesses. The backbone of most chambers are small businesses. I think we should stop paying attention to the big ones and take better care of the smaller businesses. Because, again, our chamber out in Wilsonville, and I'm not checked North Clackamas, which I also belong to, but I mean, 75% of the employees are small businesses. Yet we get enamored with some big business coming along. We have to throw money at them. Let's throw some money at our small businesses and make sure they survive. Let's make sure that our existing businesses continue to exist here in Clackamas County and thrive and grow and prosper. Thank you.
Liberal there, John.
I know, I'm a little afraid of myself.
That's great. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Next question, talking about transit. Are we going to see anything by the way of transportation funding for the county?
Well, we're talking about that. We spent 2 years basically trying to communicate the need for transportation funding in Clackamas County. I think we gained 2% support because they keep telling us they like the roads. There's nothing wrong with the roads. I think however, on this board, I think there's a difference how we move forward. I think, as we did in Milwaukee when I was mayor, is have a list of projects and the amount that it takes to do those projects and how long that's going to take, and we either add a gas tax, which does not require a vote of the people. We can add a utility fee, which does not require a vote of the people unless we create a district. And we could ask for vehicle registration fee. We're 17 million short a year. We can't possibly do that. But something reasonable, a project list that's reasonable, I think we decide that, and then we go and talk to the public, try to generate support, and make that decision on ourselves. Most of the other commissioners believe we should vote. And I know that John knows that if we vote on it, we know the answer already. It's no. So we have to take the responsibility to take care of the roads. And I hope that if this board decides it has to be a vote, that we're prepared for no, and then what do we do?
Well, all 5 of us agreed unanimously on our goals, and this was one of those goals, was transportation funding. But where we have a lot of disagreement really is about what that funding really is for. So there's a difference of agreement on whether it's maintenance, like road surface maintenance, paving, and how much of that is also new roads, so capital for new roads. So there's a disagreement, and C4, the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee, was making a lot of progress on a program we were hoping, in partnership with the cities, that would have done both and recognized that need. That has been taken over by the commission, so now that's in the commission's hands. But we have a difference in, Jim's correct, we have really a difference of opinion on how to do it and how. And I believe, on my kitchen counter, I live in Oak Grove, on my kitchen counter there is not a ballot for the November election on my counter. We missed an opportunity. And my neighbor, or our survey, or your neighbors, think that 65% of our folks think that there's no problem. But I'll guarantee you that if I open up my ballot, and I wasn't a county commissioner, I didn't know that, and I was one of those believers that there was not a problem, and I open up my ballot, and in front of me is a measure that says Clackamas County has a road problem and a funding shortage, and they're asking for more money. I might vote yes, and I might vote no, who knows? But I got the message in front of them, and if they say no, I think the county commissioners should, instead of doing the same thing we've done for 20 years, not put it on the ballot, is keep on putting it on the ballot until it passes. And if it's less money each time, a smaller ask and a smaller ask, but eventually we'll get the message out there. They'll see that message that we have a problem. Why else would the county commissioners put it before them? But we have to earn a lot of trust. I made a commitment that I would not support going to the voters until we did more with what we had. We were putting zero, when I got in the commission, $0 of our gas tax money on surface treatments as far as paving. This year, our budget committee last year, we put $500,000 towards that, which is not very much, but it's something. Thanks for the board support for that. This budget cycle, we put $1 million more, so we got $1.5 million. And our staff looked and dug down and actually budgeted and reworked their processes to put $3.5 million. So this year, we budgeted for $5 million this fiscal year to go towards service. So we're doing something, And now I'm to the point now that we've done that, if we can keep on doing that and make that commitment, that we'll reach into our pockets before we ask the ratepayers or the taxpayers, and I would think we've done that, then I will support that. And I was hopeful that we could get something on the ballot. We were promised, now this is where me and Commissioner Bard differ a little bit, and you know, it's tough, but we, you know, as you know, the Selwood Bridge thing, you know, people said, if you do that, we're gonna petition and we're gonna overturn it. They did. And that same message was conveyed to me, and I think some others here at the table as well, that if you do this without a vote of the people, we'll refer to the voters. So last thing I want to do is anger the voters and try to work with the voters, and this is something I think we need to bring, or else we'll set us back for 10 years if we force it and have it referred back.
I think we've got to remember something, that state law, it's over 100 years old, says that we cannot use ad valorem taxes for roadways. State law. Now, ad valorem is property taxes, so we're really constricted. We used to spend a lot of our, you know, the money from secure rural schools, also the known as the O&C tax, from our timber revenue in order to put into roads. Some years, $8+ million. Those days are well gone. So, but again, the point of the matter is the state law says we can't spend money, tax money on roads. Now, Clackamas County, I think, has stuck their neck out by saying, yes, we'll add $1 million here and $1.5 million there of ad valorem money, ostensibly to use for signage, ditch work, guardrails, etc. But if you look up the definition of road in Oregon, the road is defined as the right-of-way. That's a large area. I am not in favor of going out to the voters while our numbers are so low. We went out North Clackamas Parks and Recreation, and we had good numbers, and the 60% said that it'll pass. It didn't pass. These numbers are way low. 51, 52% recognize there may be a problem. I appreciate throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping that it sticks, but I'm not ready to throw big money at elections when they're really doomed for failure. Until the education part, and that's what the road ahead, if you look at our website, the road ahead spells out, is that it's worse off than what people say or think. Tootie often says perceptions are realities to people. Well, perceptions in Clackamas County are that the roads are in great shape, and that's not a true reality, unfortunately. Thank you.
So again, this is about the third time I've seen a commission attempt to put something on the ballot. Back when I was working with Commissioners Kennemer and Soa, we put something on the ballot. It failed. The second time was when our Department of Transportation and Development did Street Smart, again, with the business community getting involved to help get that message out. It failed again. I don't think that going out in the immediate is going to change the outcome. I still believe, however, that as we continue the education process, which is one of the best I've seen actually since I've been a commissioner, and if we have the help from the business community, again, the people who move the freight, the people that need the roads to transport goods and services, that if they can, with our Economic Development Commission, with the Clackamas County Business Alliance, West Side Economic Alliance, so on and so forth, if we can work on the North Clackamas Chamber in our chambers, if you can help us step up to the plate with a message, it is a very strong message, because then it isn't just a group of folks who are elected officials. It's the real people that have the jobs, run the businesses, and know firsthand the critical need we have for a road system in this county, in this region, and in this state.
Good.
Thank you. Okay, how do you think the City of Milwaukee's decision to support the $15 per hour minimum wage will affect business in our region?
Yeah, I got to go now.
Actually,
my recollection was that was for the city employees, and including part-time and seasonal employees. That was not a citywide $15 an hour.
Right.
That's how I understood it.
I hadn't heard of it.
So that's the
first.
public employee
So we can
piece.
support that.
Yeah.
We can support their support of it.
So I guess the only impact will be on the budget of the city of Milwaukee.
Yeah.
However, I would like to mention something that I think that the business community should be aware of, because you know there is an Our Oregon initiative that's moving ahead that will raise, I believe, gross receipts corporate taxes. I think it's going to be quite controversial. I know the Portland Business Alliance is watching it very closely. I know the Oregon Business Alliance is watching it very closely, and again, our own Business Alliance here and our chambers. I personally think it's an overreach at this point in time, which will be a controversial thing for me to say, but I feel very strongly that something of that sort at this time is a huge overreach and would potentially hurt the business community, and I would suspect some businesses would even leave the state. So I would just ask the chamber be aware of it, follow it, and educate people about it, because I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's rolling forward with folks, and they are painting businesses as the large evil corporations one more time, when in my estimation that is not the case and has never been the case in this state. So,
You know, I have a small business in Milwaukee. We've been in business 90 years. I think my dad started me at 50 cents. Times, of course, have changed. But I can tell you, when we sold gasoline, that those kids who worked at the garage paid through high school and college with that money. And frankly, if I had to pay $15 an hour to pump gas, I'd have to pump it because I'm on salary. But I don't pump gas. And none of my employees make less than $15 an hour, I can assure you of that. But I would have concerns with a blanket go to $15, maybe over 5 years. But I know that if we were pumping gas and I had a bunch of kids working for me, I would definitely have to reduce the number of kids who work for me, because I couldn't possibly afford it. Because, you know, I supply health insurance too. I give them retirement accounts, you know, and their dental and their eye, all those things add up above the $15. Now, if they took that off that total $15, I'd be fine with that. But City of Milwaukee, I mean, congratulations. I hope that the employees, I didn't know they had employees that made less than $15 an hour, but the contractual employees are the ones that oftentimes are probably less than that.
Well, according to Wilda Parks in the back,
yes.
they don't have any employees who make $15 an hour. They make, what did you say?
I didn't understand what you said to me.
You said that there are no employees in Milwaukee who make less than $15.
At the city.
At the city.
What we already
Do. Thank you. Just wanted to make that clear. Next question.
Well, let me just say that there's a ripple factor here. If you think about it, let's say at a particular place of employment, somebody's making $15, and there's several people making $12.50, $13.50. So you elevate all those people up to $15. What happened to that person who earned $15? Does he or she get to stay there? Congratulations, all your work here doesn't mean squat. You're not going to get the same as everybody else? No. The ripple factor is that they have to then raise those wages as well in order to show how much more they're appreciated than the entry-level people. So I'm concerned that it's not just the 15, it's the escalating factor involved. Thank you.
Good point.
Yeah, I want to add a little bit that there are, like John said, I think there's some unintended consequences with this. And I've been a business owner almost my entire adult life. So as a lot of you are friends and have small businesses yourselves, and I talked to a friend of mine who he pays his guys about $17, $18 an hour, and they work hard. It's a construction company. They work really hard. The type of business he is, it's very labor intensive. They work long days. And he's in a very competitive environment, meaning he really can't afford to pay his guys $25 an hour. So what's going to happen, his concern is, is that when people who are in less labor-intensive jobs, whether they're working at a restaurant or whatever they're doing, when they start making $15 an hour, what incentive, because he's having a hard time keeping his employees, right? What incentive does he have, or those employees have, to continue to work that hard for $17 or $18 an hour? And his entry level is about 15, so he's had a very hard time recruiting. So I think his perspective is he's really kind of worried about retaining the employees he has, because in his market, he can't afford to bring them up to a comparable salary to what they're worth comparatively for those people who are at minimum wage versus where they're at today. That's all I got on that.
Okay. Wilsonville seems to be having a better success working with Metro. What are they doing that we aren't?
Well, having been in Wilsonville for 40 years, having been on their city council and as mayor, you know, one of the things that was demonstrated on Monday night at Wilsonville City Council meetings, and that meeting was full of angry people, is the density problem. So Wilsonville has been good partners with Metro, to the extent that they have 56% multifamily in that city, more than any city in the metro region, more than any city in the metro region. So getting along with Metro, if that means more density, yeah, Wilsonville's done a good job, but their people are ticked off. And frankly, there was recall talked about that night. So Metro means density, folks. I mean, if you think about the Metropolitan Housing Rule, it says that any new lands to come into UGB shall be 50% multifamily. Now, I don't think that's workable. I think that's a problem with us, and it certainly is with Wilsonville. So Wilsonville wants something right now, desperately, and the fact of the matter is Metro is not willing to give it to them, regardless of whether the maps, the urban rural maps, have been approved or not. Metro's going to wait another 3 years to decide if anybody needs any additional UGB lands. So I don't think that just because Wilsonville is a poster child of getting along with Metro, that it does all mean good things for them. Thank you.
I just want to mention with Wilsonville, they really are one of our biggest economic engines here in the county. When you look at the quality and the kinds of businesses that are there, Fleer, Xerox, Cisco Foods, and of course the location of Oregon Tech in Wilsonville is actually becoming a huge technological hub of getting young people into good, high-paying, 21st century innovative jobs. We do have an issue with land use right now. My understanding is that the city is concentrating on the Basalt Creek area and other areas to have its land for economic development. There's always been that issue of south of the river, which I think has put up some roadblocks, and I personally don't think that until that conversation is solved with our colleagues at Metro, it's going to be somewhat difficult. However, I do think that they are motoring ahead as an economic engine and are concentrating in an area where they want to see growth. I also know, as the chair alluded to, is that they have a need for housing as well. And part of the issue is saying, okay, we are the economic engine, we have all this industrial land, we are generating all this value, but we also need the housing so people can stay there, live there, and work there.
Okay, great.
I would add that the old saying, location, location, location. From my business background and coming into government, especially county government, most especially, is that trying to learn really what the environment really is and what's successful, who's successful, why, and just kind of doing analysis over the years. I've learned that, you know, if you're along an interstate and you're a city, you're probably in a good place. Just think about the I-5 corridor. It's really the corridor of wealth, if you really think about that from a government perspective, even from a business perspective. You look at the employment land that they have, it's utilized, and the employment land they have in an inventory, they're in a great place. You look at the businesses that are there because of that, they're in a great place. Their assessed value is very high, so they're a very successful city. I'm just tickled and pleased that they're substantially in Clackamas County, and they're been a great partner. So if just imagine for one moment that if every city in Clackamas County had a major highway with adequate capacity and an available employment land, and all the infrastructure available, how successful they would be. And I think, again, they're in a great spot, and we need to somewhat replicate that. And we have our industrial area on 212, on a state highway. It's successful as well. Where we have cities like, again, just look at where cities are located and where those interstates are and where those state highways are, and you'll get a better idea about that. But I'm pleased about what they're doing. They too had an urban renewal district in the 80s that they implemented, as did Clackamas County. So I just was at their economic development presentation here. We did a tour of their economic employment land areas here about 2 weeks ago, and just kind of going over some of the numbers. That area of Wilsonville grew 5 times faster economically than the rest of the areas that were not in the urban renewal district. Very similar to Clackamas Town Center area. That area grew 5 times faster than the rest of the county, or 5 times faster than this area where we're in right now. Granted, this area grew as well, but 5 times faster in those areas. So economic development programs that they implemented in the past have paid off.
Well, you know, I had the opportunity to live in Villebois, where everyone said, I was there, of course, after it was partially built, which if you went by there today, you probably couldn't find my house. It's just, the growth is massive. There was multifamily, a mix of single-family homes, apartments. You know, it was a great place to live. Of course, now I live on a little ranch, but at the time it was a great place to live, walkability. And the same people were probably there who said, oh, no one's ever going to use these fields. No one's ever going to want to bring their families here. It wasn't true. The parks were full every weekend, and it was full of family and kids. It was a great place. Frog Pond, I haven't really looked at it, and I know that's what you're talking about, right? Right. I'm sure it's the same thing, you know, NIMBY, anti-growth, but I haven't seen the plan, so I can't really comment on that. But the other thing is that Wilsonville doesn't call them names, doesn't call Metro names. They work with Metro, and we sometimes are not so friendly.
Okay, thank you. Last question, and we'll end on a high note. What is the county doing in regards to marijuana and land use?
We're not. That is. Well, I would say the voters have spoken. I'd say the voters have spoken. None of us actually voted for legalizing marijuana. It's coming. We want to have some control. We want to try to preserve our farmland and our rural communities. We have varying opinions on whether it should be in industrial areas, but frankly, or where the retail stores should be. And we're trying to make that controlled as much as possible. I heard today that Portland is probably eliminating the distance between marijuana stores. They're talking about doing that. I hear Hawthorne Boulevard is already, which used to be a great place to visit, is now marijuana every block. Soon, you won't be able to find a decent Starbucks. But the thing for us is, you know, we haven't made those decisions. We're trying to be careful to preserve Clackamas County the way it is. But I would say one of our concerns is industrial areas. There has been talk that it absorbs all the industrial areas, but OLCC actually limits the canopy size. And frankly, I think if you eliminate that opportunity in industrial areas, you push them out to our rural community, and then they have the impact. So that's the discussion we're going to have. Planning Commission hearing is it this week or next week?
I'm not sure.
And then
Next week.
Then we have 2 hearings, so I look forward to that discussion.
We've been charged with implementing time, place, and manner on setting the marijuana rules for recreational marijuana. And it's an interesting conundrum we find ourselves in. So we're moving ahead on this. We're spending a huge amount of money that the general public can't even fathom. Because once you legalize something, you regulate it. So it's not a free-for-all. And it's still illegal on federal lands and our national parks. But my point is, we're moving ahead on this, but we're still waiting for the OLCC to give us rules. So as we're up against a hard date on January, we are going to be implementing rules, but yet if we do something, you know, that's not quite right, OLCC is going to come in and do it. And I suspect that every regular session of the legislature, there will be corrections and additions and subtractions made on what we do as we go forward. Now, nobody wants a processing plant next to them. The legislature said recreational grow sites on farmland is okay. So what do we do to protect the neighboring farms from the smell or the processing, if it's allowed to be there, or any other type of farming activities, because it does smell. I am not a big proponent of the use of marijuana. I think it has huge implications on our youth. We've cited study after study the use of marijuana in high school kids does affect their brains as they get older, and that is, to me, very worrisome, because we are saying, hey, yeah, it's okay for you kids to go out and do this.
Well, I recognize the voters when they voted for Measure 91. I think the voters primarily were thinking recreational use of marijuana should not be a crime, and so I recognize that, acknowledge that that's where the voters were. However, we're a little bit unique, and I'm kind of glad that this is really the last subject to talk about, because I can capture some of the things we talked about earlier. So in HB 3400, they identified that growing pot would be legal and on EFU land. So we've made a great case over years that we got to preserve our farmland for growing crops, food, so on. We have our rural residential zoning where people want to live away from some of the elements, and I think that growing pot, if it's not done properly, creates problems. So now we're forced to regulate it there. But now in Colorado, the Denver experience particularly, is that a lot of that employment land was absorbed by the market of growing. So now they're growing like crazy, and there's very difficult. And the prices of employment land, or not just land, but rentals for commercial and industrial spaces have gone up significantly. So here we have the county, and I could be wrong on this, but from what I understand, maybe Clackamas County is probably the county of the 36 counties where we have very little, the least amount of employment land available for counties. So why would we sacrifice that to this industry when we know we have a shortage? And I think that's the problem. And we have an opportunity to opt out. And opt out means that we can opt out of just the growing and preserve the quality of life in our rural areas, preserve our industrial lands for typical kinds of businesses, and not risk any of that. And opt out would mean we could be eligible for the taxes, but I'm concerned about taxing, regulating, and litigating. I think that's a recipe for disaster. I think those costs will eat us alive, and the revenue we'll get from taxes will not make up for that.
Thank you. If your questions didn't get answered, I encourage you all to, afterwards visit the commissioners.
I just want to make one comment. I'll make it really fast. My big concern about marijuana is what it's going to be. How's that going to work out in the workforce and people under the influence? So as business people, I see you nodding your head, that's going to be a huge, huge issue no matter what we do and how we regulate it, workforce. And people not being drug-free and coming into work, which is already a huge issue for our workforce and our business folk.
I just want to say I'm a child of the 60s, and you know what they say. If you remember the 60s, you weren't there.
Thank you. Thank you. Good points. Very good points. So feel free to come up and visit the commissioners after we're done. So, thank you. And let's give a hand to all the commissioners.